Welcome back, everyone. This is part 2 of my interview with Andrew Henry of Henry Holsters. They are the manufacturers for the Filster Enigma and a lot of other incredible holster brands and parts. So if you are interested in continuing from part 1, I highly recommend you continue listening to this episode. If you have yet to listen to part 1, go ahead and go back to the first episode in this series and then come back here later on. Thanks, and we'll see you there. Let's get into it. I wanted to ask this, but it's coming up again, so I feel like it's time. I'm in this weird in-between space with my feelings of off-body carry. When I first joined the industry, I was like, hell no, like that sounds like a death trap. Don't do it at all.
Yeah.
And then I got to this place where I was like, okay, I see women get attacked all the time to and from the gym. Like that is like a very like that the gym is like a place where like I actually think when I go to the gym like I need to be armed. So I like to wear leggings. I don't like to wear shorts, and I really don't like sweatpants. Leggings is like the only thing I like to really wear to the gym. And
interesting.
I don't know why I don't know. I don't like my bare skin touching stuff. Sweatpants is okay. It gets too like the feeling of the sweat and the fabric.
Yeah, putting on sweatpants when you're hot and sweaty is not fun.
But even like the movement, I don't know if it's because I haven't found a brand I like, but like squatting and joggers, it pulls the like cuff up on to my leg, and then I feel like my pants are gonna fall down. There's like a weird thing, and then too loose of sweatpants, and I feel naked. So I really like leggings.
Whatever works for you, leggings it is.
Right. Anyway, that's hilarious though. I've never like really thought about why, but anyway, so when I go to the gym, I do take my Vertex fanny pack. That is, it is the one place that I truly like. That is my mode of carry. Don't get me wrong. This morning, I had a dermatology appointment. Barely rolled out of bed in time to get there. I threw my Vertex fanny pack on because I was like, I gotta go, or I'm gonna like get fined. And yeah, I don't love to wear it out. If I can wear my Enigma goes on. And so, to the gym though, I know that I'm going to the gym and I'm coming home. I don't really like to go on a bunch of errands with it, with the fanny pack if I don't have to, because after I rolled, man, my world was just like, it really taught me like it was a lot harder than inside the waistband as far as retention, drawing. Also, that's where I keep my cash. If someone wants my cash, I have to give them my gun. And it's like, if I'm held, if there's a gun in my head, that's a very specific scenario. Anyway, so many like little pieces of context we're not getting into in this situation. But as far as that situation, because you just mentioned at least having pepper spray, flashlight, phone, and I think that's amazing. Something you mentioned earlier, I promise I'm getting to my point. I'm connecting the dots. Thank you. I'm connecting the dots from earlier when you mentioned like if you can't enjoy where you're at because you don't have a gun, then you're missing out on life. I completely agree with that. Lately, though, I've been training a little bit more for the tactical games in September, and I've been going on runs, which is like not me. I'm not a runner. I'm trying to become a runner. Like night people try to become a morning person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the boat I'm in. But I can't go running unless I have a gun on me. I genuinely like the whole time I'm running, I'm thinking of, oh my God, what if like 3 guys pull up in a van? I have to get in that van. I don't have any sort of like, and don't get me wrong, again, so many nuances we're not getting into, but what would you say about, and I don't take my fanny pack running. I actually was going to ask you about that specific mode of concealment in a bit.
I just sling my AK and just off I go.
Yeah, that's great. I bet no one approaches you.
No, I was going to say, you sling your AK. No guys in the van are ever going to possibly. I hate running. I despise running. I can't stand it. I don't like running at all. I feel that,
but the more I've been thinking about, I've been in this, not that you asked, but I've been in this transitional space between bodybuilding, lifting, and I want to be able to bug out with my rifle and run 100 yards and be able to take a shot, whatever. I'm in that mentality right now, and the training is more enjoyable to me because of it. It feels more functional. It applies to jiu-jitsu. It applies to firearms instruction or firearms competition. And I've been enjoying it because of that aspect. So like, because my reason is different now, my why has changed. I'm
Okay.
actually enjoying running a little bit. But the
Okay.
other day, like, I took probably, because it's the first time I went on a run since I made a Filster Enigma running video like a couple years ago, and I literally have not run since then, unless CrossFit forced me to.
Mm-hmm.
But I threw on this like crossbreed. Actually, one sec, let me grab it. It's because I'm wanting to make a YouTube video. Let me give you some context. I just made a YouTube video on fanny pack concealment.
Yep.
Like
Watched part
what
of it.
criteria? Oh, you did. Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you. What criteria should you check? And then I did a review of 3 different fanny packs out on the market. Well, I'm wanting to do a video on running and what you can
Mm-hmm.
wear when you run, because I've besides the excuse of not liking running, I've made so many excuses to not go running because I don't feel like I have a true comfortable way. And while the Filster Enigma was semi-comfortable to run in, I'm trying to figure that out more, and that's just user error. That has nothing to do with the Enigma, and that's not just because you're sitting here. I said that to my husband yesterday, so he can vouch for me. But this little band I threw on with my Velcro backed kydex holster, and it was great. I actually really liked it. I haven't rolled with it yet, so I'm going to go roll with it. I'm going to take it to the range. I'm going to do some like movement training from it, some different concealment garments, and then I'm going to make a video on that whole experience compared to like the Enigma and everything. But all of that to say, what would you have to say to people that do feel like I can't go do that unless I have my gun?
Well, the first thing is my context is not your context, and my risks are not your risks. And so anybody from outside who hears only a summary of your situation, their assessment of what you should or shouldn't do is going to be in some ways inevitably critically incomplete.
Yeah.
And there are certain things like I think there are plenty of people who do off-body carry safely and well. I think in most cases, with minor changes to maybe their wardrobe, they could carry on-body, even though they don't currently think that they could make that work. I think it's probably more achievable than many of them think. However, the number of cases where somebody gets injured or killed because a gun was carried loose in a purse and then the purse was left unattended, like, I can't say whether any individual person should or should not off-body carry, but I can say if you off-body carry, you have to retain total control of that off-body carry method. You cannot leave it in the shopping cart while you walk around the corner to the next aisle. You cannot leave it on the bleachers while you go to the concession stand to buy nachos. You cannot leave it in the pew at church. You cannot leave it on the bench at the playground. You have to retain complete control of that. What exactly you carry in and exactly how you do that, there's a ton of variables there. And it can be done well or poorly by just about anybody. The same way that on-body carry can be done well or poorly by just about anybody. So in the context, you mentioned the Filster Enigma. Obviously, I manufacture all the Filster Enigma products here at our shop. And I believe in it as a product because I think it is uniquely accessible to a lot of people for whom other belt-oriented carry options are either not viable or especially challenging. So I think it is more applicable in a wider range of circumstances than most other carry solutions are. And I like it. For me personally, most of the time, at least during my work week, I don't carry in an Enigma. And that's just because at work, I often have to take test holsters on and off multiple times throughout the day. And taking off a belt holster and locking it in the safe in the shop while I'm trying on test product is way easier than taking off an Enigma and putting it back on multiple times a day. And so for that reason, because of my specific context and what I do for work that involves changing holsters multiple times per day to wear different things as I'm trying them out, that's a very unique and niche case. Most people don't try on 15 holsters in any given day. Some days I do. When I'm out and about on weekends, if I'm going out disc golfing with my kids or I'm going to church, I'm almost always carrying an Enigma just because it gives me more control over on my body the relative position of my belt waistband of my trousers versus where I conceal the gun. And that gives me more consistent placement of my firearm, whether I'm wearing sweats or khakis or jeans, regardless of what pants I'm wearing and where they most comfortably sit along my waist. I can keep my gun in the same spot. I love the consistency of that. That works well for me. But off-body carry, it's not, I'm almost never asking the question, is this the ultimate method versus how does this compare with the other available alternatives in this context? And this has come up a lot in the concealment workshop, specifically around women's clothing and carrying skirts and dresses. Anytime you have a garment that has a, that's continuous from the shoulders down to the knees, a dress, not a skirt, not something where you've got a separate bottom and top where you have a gap at the waistline to access tools. But like if you're carrying an Enigma, it's under that clothing and you either have to access it from the neckline down or you have to get the hem of the dress and bring it up to get access to the firearm. We often see people who are new to the workshop say something along the lines of, you know, have you drawn on that? Have you drawn that on a timer? What are your draw to first shot times like in that outfit? And that's the wrong question, not because the draw to first shot time is not a relevant metric, but because it is a relative metric. Could this person get a draw to first shot faster from a mid-drop outside the waistband unconcealed gamer rig? Absolutely. Does it meet any of the other criteria that are necessary in their given context? No. If this person couldn't carry in an Enigma because this clothing does not support a belt in any way, if this person could not carry in an Enigma, would their other options be purse carry or no carry at all? And if the other options were off-body carry in a clutch or a purse of some kind, or simply not bringing the firearm, how does the draw to first shot time in the Enigma compared to draw to first shot time from the purse or draw to first shot time from your gun safe at home? And we're almost never dealing with all the possible range of carry solutions in play at the same time. We're looking at a particular context, particular clothing, a particular person at a particular time and place and saying, what is the optimal carry solution for this person here now that gives them the best combination of security, access, comfort? And even those things are not objective. People have very widely varying degrees of tolerance for physical discomfort. I know some people who can just hike until their feet are blistered and they just keep hiking. And I'm like, oh man, I feel like if I do this for another hour or so, I'm going to have a blister on my heel. This bothers me. But at the same time, like I can, if I need to conceal stuff tight, I can tighten my belt and suck in all my gear more into my body. I can wear my gear tightly enough that you can see every little stipple mark from the grip of my handgun imprinted in the skin when I take my gun off at the end of the day. I don't wear it like that all the time, but every once in a while, if I've got a fairly fitted shirt on, I'll cinch my belt down a little tighter and really pull that gear in tight. And I can sustain that for hours. Even if it's uncomfortable, I can go, I can deal with it. I've got a friend who just like, he puts on an inside the waistband holster for 20 minutes. He's like, oh no, I can't do it. I just can't wear it. I have to wear an outside the waistband holster. And I'm not sure if he's just being a baby or if there's really something going on there where he feels that so differently than how I feel it, that if I experienced what he's experiencing, it would be intolerable for me. I don't know. That's completely internal. It's subjective, and I can't measure it. And so what I'm trying to do when I design gear is give people, security is not optional. Gun buckets don't count. Like it has to securely retain your firearm. It has to be able to retain that firearm, even in spite of vigorous movement. You have to be able to run and then fall down and grapple around and not have the gun come out on its own. If the gun can just come out on its own, no matter what else, no matter how comfortable that rig is, it's a no-go. It
Right.
needs to be comfortable enough to wear for the duration you expect to wear it. If you put it on and 8 hours later, you've suddenly developed a limp, that's not sustainable. And things
Right.
we wear closely and tightly against our body can cause skin shear injuries. That's especially the case when you're hot, sweaty, when the skin behind your holster gets moist. You can create injuries that actually cause damage. And so if your holster hurts you, discomfort is one thing. Pain is your body telling you, hey, I'm taking damage. Something needs to stop. So I don't ever
Right.
tell somebody just tough through it, just ignore the pain, just sit you down tighter and toughen up.
Right.
But I think a lot of people could have a higher functional threshold for minor discomfort than they want to have. But they get to decide that for themselves. I don't tell anybody that they have to carry. And if somebody wants to carry, I want to give them the tools that make that possible. But it's not my job to guilt them and say, if you don't carry, you're a bad person. If you don't carry, you don't care about your family. If you don't carry, you don't believe that evil is real and you're just, a head in the sand idiot. That's not my place. And it's not even true. I know many people who do not carry a firearm and do not want to carry a firearm, and they are realists about the world.
Mm-hmm.
They understand that evil and pain exist, and they love and care for the people around them. But
Right.
this particular thing, this solution, this tool is not something they're willing to consider using or carrying.
Mm.
And I don't have any right or any responsibility to try to change their mind about that. Now, if somebody wants to be a police officer and then doesn't want to carry a gun, but I need to call them because someone is trying to harm my family, and they're like, oh yeah, I showed up, I didn't bring my gun, I don't like guns. I'm like, well, you're a cop. It goes with the job. It's your responsibility. You have to do it.
Right.
But anybody else
Absolutely.
in their private life, if you don't like sweatpants, don't wear sweatpants. For me, I don't like going out and running errands before or after jiu-jitsu because I wear flip-flops to the gym, and I hate flip-flops.
I feel that. It's so
I hate them
even
every
like
second they're on my feet.
heels. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't want to spend
I get
an
that.
extra second in those. Sweatpants I'm
Right.
fine with. Yoga pants I wouldn't be fine with, but I can't abide flip-flops. I have to take them off as quickly as possible. I get to the gym, take them off immediately, get on the mat. Get back home,
I
take
feel
them off
that.
immediately. Just they're a utilitarian tool that I wear in that very limited context and never touch for any reason otherwise ever.
Right. It's so that you don't get germs on the ground.
Yeah, it's the contamination thing.
from the
People can
mask.
drip sweat in my mouth,
Absolutely.
but if I have to walk around, there,
Yeah.
you really get to know people well when you risk sharing skin infections with them all the time. You really care.
Yes.
You get to care about people's hygiene. Part of being a good training partner is put on deodorant at lunch break during the class.
100%. And cut your nails. Dude, I trained with this one guy who had long, pointy nails.
He was probably a
And
classical guitarist.
So I have a different theory. He also had these like wolf looking sideburns. You know, those people who like identify as animals. I'm not trying to be rude or exclusionary, but like his nails in the class was terrible. He scratched me so many times and it was uncomfortable. They looked gross too. They didn't look well kept. And I remember thinking like, ew, like this is the equivalent of no deodorant or not washing your gi
Yeah.
after.
Oh yeah. The time I remember finding
Yeah.
out that one of my training partners in one of our morning classes, he's like, yeah, some weeks I don't wash my gi. I'm like, nope, round's over. Don't touch me.
Dude. Mm-mm.
I looked over
Every
the coach. I'm
day.
like, Austin, this guy isn't cleaning his gi. And he's like, hey, dude, get off the mat. He's
Yeah,
like,
that
just
sucks.
kicked him off the mat immediately.
That
Like, no.
sucks. The only bad thing about washing your gi every day is that mine, I don't know about you, mine shrinks. Even though I wash it in cold and air dry, it can shrink. Like it
Yeah.
happens. That's the only bad thing about washing it every time. But I do it anyway. I can't imagine getting back into it. I have forgotten before. I have forgotten. It has happened. I know.
Do you
But
only
that
own
was
one gi?
Yeah. Right now I do. I grew out of my other ones. They all like shrunk.
Just get on BJJ HQ. They've got daily deals on different stuff. You can get an inexpensive backup gi,
That's
even if
fair.
you use it rarely. Get it. yes, having a spare gi is a mandatory thing if you're going to
That's a
train
good
with any
point.
regularity. You should just it's just like having training mags and carry mags. If you take your
Yes.
daily carry mags to the range and you drop them in the sand and you beat them up and you drop them on concrete and then you put them back in your carry gun, the chance that something goes wrong with your mag goes way, way, way up. Keep a couple of very
100%.
nice, clean, pristine carry mags that you shoot occasionally to verify they're cycling properly, and then
Yes.
otherwise you don't beat them up.
Right.
Really worthwhile.
100%. Yes.
Have gis. Get another gi. But yeah,
That was actually a while back when I had multiple gis. I didn't wash any of them. Like, okay, so I let them build up instead of like washing one that night. I know I'm not don't judge me.
I'm trying real hard.
It's when I started in
when you're throwing shade at the furries and then turn around and say I only have this one gig and I wash it once a month. I don't really know if I can get on board with that.
No. That was one
No,
time. Let me learn. Yeah, and then so I went to a particular gym where a lot of the guys smoked pot.
Yes.
And didn't wash their gis. And that was when I learned the very like niche problem of the stinky people at Jiu-Jitsu. This was when I truly first started in Jiu-Jitsu. And then I remember thinking, oh my God, I never want to be that person. And that was kind of the switch for me because I rolled with those guys and smelled them. And I remember talking to a friend and being like, do you ever smell marijuana on those people? And she'd be like, yeah, they smoke a joint before class. Like, and I'd be like, oh my God, like so validating, but also gross.
We have a couple guys who have come in a few times. We're just like, dude, I'm gonna get if you
contact
if
high.
you mount me, I'm gonna end up with a contact high. Like,
Yes.
could you just keep your gi away from my face? I do not want to come home and have my wife think that I skipped class and sat in my car and like smoked a doobie. Let's not do this.
Right.
But no, yeah, you should have a spare gi. My oldest son, when he was learning to do laundry, shrank my favorite gi into oblivion. He washed it hot and then tumble dried it on high.
No.
And it shrank
That's so sad.
so much.
Oh, I'm so
that
sorry.
the only it broke my heart. I loved that gi.
Yeah.
And the only person there, I had a friend, a female student in the gym who was much smaller than me. She was the only person I could find. I'm like, hey, do you want my nice tatami gi? My son just shrank it down to your size. And she's like, great. And she took it and she used that gi and then like 2 weeks later, one of the coaches was like, hey, Andrew, do you want one of my King's gis? My roommate shrank it. And I'm like, it's like the universe, like you give a gi, you get a gi, you lose a gi, you shrink a gi, you get a gi. It just keeps happening. But
that's so funny. I think the reason I only have one right now, and seriously, I have not done that recently, so give me grace. But the reason I really only have one right now is because I only roll like twice a week, a day apart. So there's like, I don't know, to me, I just come home, I throw it in and I air dry it and grab it out on my way out. It's just easy. And I also, I don't know, I probably should get a backup one. After this conversation, I think
treat yourself.
That should happen.
Treat yourself and take care of your training partners. Show up with a fresh gi.
I got it.
If you're going to class, put on deodorant, brush your teeth and or use mouthwash. Don't come to class with stinky breath.
What's that one? I use that green mouthwash with the orange cap like 3 times a day. It's probably too much.
No idea.
But it's
even
amazing.
In a pinch, like those little Listerine breath tabs, keep them in your gym bag. And if for any reason you end up coming straight to the gym, you haven't had a chance to brush your teeth, just do your training partners the courtesy of freshening up a little bit. Everybody will appreciate it. 100%. Especially if you're the kind of person who gets on top and then huffs and puffs for 2 minutes. Like,
yeah. It's called ThermaBreath. If anyone needs a good recommendation for a good mouthwash that doesn't, I don't like the Listerine alcohol-y stuff, but ThermaBreath.
That's how you know it's working. If it doesn't make my mouth hurt, I feel like I haven't gotten my money's worth.
ThermaBreath, it will it does kind of cook in there. You do feel it, but it doesn't hurt like Listerine. I don't know. And there is no they have the green bottles. No, it doesn't have like a super strong scent. That's the one I use because it just like makes your breath like nothing. It's so weird. It's magic. It blew up on TikTok and I tried it and now I use it every day.
I was going to say, are you an influencer or did you get influencered?
I got influencered. Hey, ThermaBreath should sponsor me. use it as much as I use like my Enigma. So
You would have to read that ad. This podcast brought to you by Thermobreath. You have to like read that a quarter inch from the mic in the most like quiet, slow ASMR voice.
Yes.
I'm sure you
Imagine
would
me
sell.
speaking in your face right now. What would you want to smell?
As a joke, when we first released the Enigma, we had a lot of people complaining it was just hard. John did like a 5-minute walkthrough video of the total assembly, but he wasn't doing it in real time. He'd you do this step, and then the video would speed up and he'd cut to the next thing. And what I actually ended up doing is at a certain point, I recorded the stress-free Enigma assembly video where I did like a 20-minute straight through, no speed ups, no cuts, voiceover, one take live, complete assembly. And I talked really close to the mic and super slow, kind of like I was Bob Ross assembling a holster. And the number of people who thought that was hilarious and thanked me for making it was awesome. It's like all I had to do was slow down my talking by 200%.
Yes.
And then put this together on a camera. And it legitimately helped a bunch of people who'd said, I've tried watching the existing assembly video and I can't keep up with it. I can't assemble it as fast as the video's going. And every time I have to like pause and restart, I sort of lose my train of thought. And I'm really struggling to put this together. And they were like, yeah, this is perfect. I watched your video at like 75% speed. I'm like, you took that video and you slowed it down? And they did. We had some people who watched that video slowed down to be able to work at the pace, but it really helped them. And that's great because in the concealment gear space, if I can help a customer who would otherwise struggle and quit, I'm into it, whether they're carrying with a holster I made or something else, as long as it fully covers the trigger guard, securely retains the firearm, and keeps the holster attached to your person. Even if sticky holsters had a rigid insert to protect the trigger guard, the fact that they don't have any mechanical connection to your body or your belt other than surface friction, to me means they don't qualify as an acceptable holster. A lot of belly bands they keep it attached to your body, but they don't protect the trigger guard. The number of belly bands where it's essentially just fabric or elastic covering the trigger guard and you can pull the trigger through the band, those I don't consider to be an acceptable carry solution. Right. But barring things that fail on those very clear-cut main criteria of if it doesn't do this, it's not safe, don't carry it. Once you're over that hurdle, the range of acceptable products to carry is very, very wide.
Yeah.
And people have their own preferences. Some people spend a lot of extra money on custom prints and colors and things that they like. The same way I like to have a brightly colored hoodie and a bright orange car.
Right.
Like, totally fine. It's fun if you like wearing goofy socks and that makes you smile and it allows you to start up friendly conversations with people, random people in public. And that allows you to brighten your day and brighten their day. By all means, rock the funky socks.
Yes.
You know, like you walk by and someone's like, are you wearing Darkwing Duck socks? You're like, yes, let's talk about it. Darkwing Duck was the coolest. Let's get dangerous. You have all these things you can do that can even be a part of your overall concealment strategy. Because when someone notices your socks or notices the funny hat you're wearing or whatever it is, you are causing them to spend their available attention on something that you're not concealing a gun under.
Yes. Tatiana Whitlock mentioned jewelry one time.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, I don't know if you can tell, I love black. It like pains me to wear another color. I have to it's very much outside of my comfort zone. So my mom bought me these beautiful like blue and gold. I'm a silver wearer too. Mostly I have gold, but doesn't matter. Earrings, and they're gorgeous. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't wear these. They're too distracting. And then Tatiana came on the podcast and then I started wearing them. And like, once they had a purpose, I actually got used to them. And they're like one of my favorite pairs right now. Yeah, that's like a stretch for me. Like that's out of my comfort zone. And I also love jackets. I have like so many different jackets with different colors.
But they're all black.
I don't know. Well, most of them.
Yeah.
I have a blue jean jacket with Sherpa on the inside.
Well, so there are certain kinds of things that draw people's attention because they're interesting or they're colorful or they're eye-catching. Like I would never want to wear a really expensive watch. Partly that's just because I don't like heavy, like I don't wear any rings or any jewelry on my hands at all. I wear a watch.
Okay.
I don't wear a wedding band. I really, as a musician, I really dislike feeling constrained by anything on my hands.
Okay.
And that's been the case for me for forever. But
Hey.
it would be one thing if I was wearing something that drew attention because somebody could tell it was valuable. If I'm walking around with a blinged out Rolex watch on my wrist, that might draw attention I don't want for reasons I don't
That's a
want.
good point.
If I'm walking around with an obviously silly, inexpensive, brightly colored orange watch with a rubber strap, no one's going to look at that and think, man, I really need to like wait out behind the store and rob this guy and take that cool G-Shock, that Casio watch.
Right. Yes.
And so there is a line between
that's a good point.
wearing things that are ostentatious or obviously valuable. I mean, even like I've always driven beater cars just for years and years, always just beater cars. And I bought a little bright orange Audi last year.
Okay.
And it was a salvage car. It had gotten totaled out in a hailstorm. The entire car is dented all over, but it's such a bright color orange. You cannot see the dents unless you're standing right next to it. So it looks like a really nice car, but it actually got totaled.
Interesting.
It's just fun. It was a neat opportunity to pick that up. But realizing that now when I'm out in a parking lot and I'm getting in or out of that car, I know it was a totaled car that I got a good deal on. Other people see a bright, ostentatious Audi. And that they might have a totally different perception of that vehicle and what it says about me. And that's whether or not I'm a good person to approach to ask for money or to approach to try to take stuff from. Like you don't really get to control what other people read into what you wear and what you drive. I was standing in line next to a dude who had a knit cap on it, had this huge F off, all spelled out, just F off on the front of his hat. And I'm like, wow. You're like,
got
pretty clear social signals you're broadcasting there. I'm going to stay out of your 6-foot bubble.
Exactly. 100%.
But most of the time, you make your own inferences from how people stand, how they look, whether their face is in their phone. And it doesn't matter how awesome the concealment gear that I sell to you is. If you routinely, habitually handicap yourself by wandering around in public spaces, especially through transitional spaces, with your face jammed in your phone, it doesn't matter how dialed in your Enigma setup is. If you don't see the problem coming before it's at hand's distance from you, you're going to start at a huge, huge deficit.
Absolutely.
And so I've often told people when they were asking me about this or that thing that I sell, that I make, that they could buy from me. I've often encouraged people not to buy things if they haven't gone and taken some training first.
Yeah.
Now, if they absolutely need, like, hey, I need to have a firearm on my person right now for a variety of reasons, a protective order, a separation from a spouse, who knows, there could be all kinds of factors that would mean I need to have a firearm on my person starting today, immediately, in which case, like, absolutely. In one case, I got contacted by a friend who was a trainer from out of town and had a student who called him up that day, asked for a private shooting lesson, bought her first gun, and needed a carry solution immediately for an urgent family safety issue that had just popped off. This was a thing. And he's like, hey, I don't have anything. I don't have any holsters for this firearm. She just bought a G43. Can you send me something? And we got her address and overnighted her everything she needed for free. Because the opportunity to step into that person's scary, frightening, unchosen emergency and say, you've got a good local instructor who's going to teach you how to shoot and handle the firearm safely. We're going to give you the stuff you need to carry it securely. We want you to be able to protect yourself and your kids. And there's no money in this for us. We don't really care about that. what you're doing right now to step up and take this responsibility on for yourself is really important, and we want to support you. I have no idea how the rest of that woman's journey has gone since that time. I obviously would have heard about it if it had gone badly. But as far as I know, she's still using that holster. And the ability to do that, to provide gear that makes people's lives more enjoyable, that frees them up from having to worry about where they are and who they're with and what's happening, and also, will my gun fall out of my waistband? You know, anytime somebody has had an experience where they bought a cheap holster and they dropped their gun at some point, that's a non-zero number of people that's happened to that I know. Like, oh yeah, I've got my first gun and I bought some cheap holster and I like bent down to pick something up and my gun fell out.
Yep.
That is like a lightning bolt for those
100%.
people to realize, oh my gosh, I am not ready. This gear is not adequate. I have to have something else.
Right.
And then, you know, normally people would find companies like myself or Filster after they'd been carrying for 5 or 10 years and had worked their way through a lot of the more common, popular Gen Pop brands that you'd find at Bass Pro Shop or Dick's Sporting Goods or Academy Sports. And then they'd eventually get to the point where they're like, hey, I really need something that performs better than this, that conceals better than this, that carries more discreetly than this. And then they would find something more bespoke like what we make. And the internet has changed all that. Social media and the ability for people to see stuff has meant that we're encountering more first-time gun owners and first-time gun buyers than ever before. And it used to be you didn't have to explain how holsters worked to people. By the time they found you, they knew what they were doing, and they found you because they knew you made what they wanted, and they already understood how it worked. And you could literally just package up a holster with no instructions of any kind, send it to them, and they would use it properly.
Right.
And now it's like, okay, we have to shoot tons of video and record podcasts and give diagrams, and things have to be QR coded because we're encountering a whole group of people for whom we are the first step in their flight of stairs for this whole journey. We're their ground floor. Where it used to be, okay, if you made it to the top of the skyscraper, we're up there somewhere. But now it's like, oh, you just bought your first gun today and you want a holster. Okay, well, have you thought about how you're going to store it? Have you taken any training yet? Have you, and just, there's all these things we get to unpack, and it's not, we've really become, especially Filster has become much more invested in the customer education side of it, even more so than the making and selling gear. Filster spends more resources and more time and energy on educational resources that they give away for free everywhere than on developing new products.
Absolutely.
Which I think is a really cool sea change. I'm really excited to be a part of that. John and Sarah are some of my best friends, and I believe in what they're doing. And I also believe in why they're doing it. I have rarely seen anybody else in any other industry that approaches what they're making and what they're selling with as much of a focus on maximizing good for the customer rather than maximizing profit for the company.
Right.
And those two aren't completely opposed to each other. They often go hand in hand.
Right.
But it's very, very, you can't step 6 inches in any direction without finding some company in the gun space that is obviously trying to just shake people down for their money and maximize the value that they can extract from customers. That's
absolutely
everywhere. And whether it's marketing through fear, marketing through racism, marketing through xenophobia, marketing through any kind of, there's all kinds of weird, twisted undercurrents in the marketing in the firearm space. And they're just bad. They're really ugly.
Absolutely. I know many people, by the way, that have purchased a gun based on whether or not there's an Enigma Express for that gun.
And that actually was very uncommon 5 years ago. People would buy a gun and then shop around for a holster for it. But as the education piece has become more key and people understand more about what they're trying to accomplish overall, it makes sense to say, I know I want to carry in this ecosystem. What gun is the appropriate size and caliber for what I want to do that fits in this ecosystem? And they're thinking of the whole thing as a unified problem to work on in their context. That's, I think, way more productive. Everyone, you know, 10 years ago, everyone talked about the holster box of shame. Anybody who owns a gun or has carried a gun for any length of time has an entire dresser drawer full of crap holsters that they bought at various gun shows. Do you have a drawer full of? Yes.
Right there.
I do too, but they're all dysfunctional prototypes of ideas that I tried that didn't quite work. It's a drawer of shame, but it's a drawer of my own shame.
That's true. Well, yeah.
But that isn't the case anymore. A lot of customers are able to learn from everybody else's trial and error in really productive ways and skip straight forward to an excellent solution that fits their clothing, fits their context, and fits their daily life really well from the get-go. That's extraordinary. That was never possible. 5 years ago, pre-Enigma, the holsters that my company made did not serve female customers nearly as well as the Enigma serves female customers today. Overwhelmingly, we struggled to find good solutions for the clothing types that our female customers preferred. The Enigma was a huge leap forward in that regard, which means we can help many more women successfully, comfortably, and discreetly carry a firearm that they want to carry. And that is really valuable. I'm proud to be part of it. It's
incredible. Absolutely. It's the one holster that when I recommend it, I don't feel any sort of apprehension. I don't feel like I have to give a disclaimer. The only disclaimer is like, hey, you may have to get a holster from this brand and then connect it to the standard.
Yep.
Big whoop. But like the fanny pack, any like literally any other holsters with sidecars, like anything that would make concealment harder. I don't have to do that with the Enigma, and I also can rely heavily on their educational pieces as backup. Like, hey, I don't know everything about it, but they have this essentially university for it. And
the sheer volume of the educational material they've generated over the past 5 years is astonishing.
Absolutely.
And if you're holds up really, really well. It's not that they haven't like what they said 3 years ago is out of date now. It's all good because it really is conceptual, not like here's how our products are the best.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And if you're listening and you're interested in looking into the concealment workshop, I'm going to link it in the show notes, which are the notes below the episode, so that you can go directly there and take a look around. Other than Filster, did you mention any other brands that you create for specifically, or is that something you're not allowed to?
I've done work for a wide variety of other companies, dozens and dozens of them over the years. We've had good relationships and done a lot of work for JM Custom Kydex, for Darkstar Gear, for a number of other companies in the space that are well respected. And I'm friends with a lot of the owners of these companies. And even though there are a bunch of brands in this space, we all have enough of a different flavor of what we make that there's actually very little direct competition. We share a lot of customers. And depending on, it's just like restaurants, depending on what you're in the mood for, if you really, really want Thai food, I run a burger joint. We make fantastic burgers, but if you want Thai food, you want to go next door to the Thai place. And my friend Tony runs the Thai place. And if you really want pizza, go next door to him to the pizza shop. Tom runs a great pizza shop. So it's not that we're all making overlapping products and have to argue amongst ourselves about who makes the best one. Is that even in the very narrow niche of deep, really good concealment appendix holsters for mid to full-size firearms, even in that space, there's enough variability in features and styles of design that you can have very distinct differences between brands that are noticeable and appreciable to the customer, where their preferences will lead them clearly to one or the other. Like everything Filster makes, all ambidextrous, all mid-height sweat guards. That's a deliberate design choice. It allows them to serve right and left-hand customers with a single SKU of product. Everything's reconfigurable, fully reversible. But to do that, they have to trade off features like they don't have molded-in wedges on the backside of any of their skeleton holsters. And if you really want a full sweat guard because you have a SIG 365 with a manual safety and that safety irritates your stomach when you carry it, the Filster holster isn't available with a sweat guard tall enough to cover that safety. If you want that full safety coverage and you want a built-in wedge, I make that. If you want the full safety coverage and you don't want a built-in wedge, Darkstar Gear makes that. If you want the full safety coverage and you don't want a wedge and you want it in a custom color or some other print or some other feature, maybe JM Custom Kydex makes that. And so all of us, we refer business to each other all the time. I even have like automatic shorthand text responses built into my phone to give recommendations for specific other holster makers. Anytime somebody
Yes.
orders something that's not on our menu, but I know Tony makes it or I know Tom makes it, I send that customer straight to them because I know their products are good. And I know that, like Chuck said, the guys who run those companies are practitioners. They're not doing it from a place of theory and hypotheticals. They're doing it from a place of training and trying and testing and iterating.
Absolutely. And the more I stretch into this industry, the more I've noticed there are so many people selling gear and they don't actually train themselves in guns and even like training. And I'm like mortified.
Nope.
It's scary. Yeah.
Yeah. Would I drive a car built by people who didn't know how to drive?
Good point.
I wouldn't like, hey, the entire layout of the interior of this car and the driver's cockpit and all the controls and everything were laid out by a person who's never driven a car and doesn't like the idea of driving cars and isn't interested in cars. Like, I don't think that's going to be good.
Right.
I want to use things that are built by enthusiasts. Like, I have a really cool manufacturing shop. We got CNC machines and lasers and all this awesome stuff. We can make tons of different things. But the number of things that are out there that I could make that I'm simply not interested in and not enthusiastic about, and therefore would never be able to bring the natural curiosity and sustain the attention long enough to really make something great in that space. It's almost everything else out there that I could possibly make. I'm like, oh yeah, I like riding a bike, but am I a bike guy? Am I really going to pour the next 5 years of my life into designing really excellent parts for a specific subset of the bike industry, whether it's single track or motocross or something else? I'm not a practitioner in that space. I can understand how to make the parts. I can understand sort of what they should look like. I can look at other competitors' things and copy them. And there's a ton of rote copying in the holster space that has zero understanding of concept or process behind it at all. And all you're seeing is, I mean, a lot of companies are using the same generic holster molds. They're all buying from the same places. There are a handful of companies making most of the holster molds that a lot of small shops that make custom holsters are using the same underlying mold. They might modify it slightly, but it's like going to 10 different burger joints and they're all buying their patties and their buns from McDonald's and they're just putting different toppings on. I was like, okay, well, these are not going to be fundamentally substantially different in any way because the real features are baked into how the holster is made. And if under the hood, they're all the same. It's like, oh, look, that looks like a Porsche. Yeah, but it's got a Honda Civic engine in it. And that looks like a Ferrari. Yeah, but it's got a Honda Civic engine in it. And like, wow, that looks like a so-and-so. Yeah, but underneath it has a Honda Civic engine in it.
Right.
It has the same things baked into it by people who may or may not be practitioners. And that's just in the design. It's in the product. So I love making things that I'm enthusiastic about.
Yes.
And when I did much more custom design work and did a lot of molds for other companies in 2016, 2017, that was most of what I did. I did more mold design and more product design than I even did holster manufacturing in those years because I was working alone. I didn't have any employees yet. And what really killed that for me was I was developing a lot of interesting stuff for myself, and John was developing a lot of interesting stuff. I was developing things for John. He was one of my main clients already at that point. But a lot of other companies who were approaching us wanted me to make things because they'd seen something that I'd made somewhere else, or they'd seen something that John had made, and they wanted me to basically just sprinkle some of that on top of a generic design so that they could sell it. And being asked by somebody to take something really interesting or clever that I'd come up with and build it into their design when I knew that they didn't really understand it or care about it the way that I did was very demoralizing. And it didn't matter whether they would pay me for the designs. I did not want to make things for people who didn't care about them or didn't understand them or didn't appreciate them. Even if they could sell them, even if I'd get paid, going, yeah, I hear what you're wanting. I understand the design specs you've listed, but literally nothing else in your catalog is like that because you haven't gone down that road at all. And you want me to just like, it's like, You want to collect $200 and pass go in one dice roll. You have to get there.
Right.
If I just leap this product forward and give you all these features, you're not going to understand them. Your customer service people won't take care of customers who have trouble with them because you won't understand them, and so the customers won't be able to be taught about them. It's the same reason why we basically don't sell any of our stuff in gun stores. I tried for years and years, and overwhelmingly, the staff, and particularly the management and ownership of most local gun stores, was completely uninterested in the design and features and functions of holsters. They were interested in how many percentage points of profit margin do I have? But why should I buy your holster for $35 when I can buy a Black Hawk holster for $9 and hang it on my wall and make an extra 20 some dollars in profit on every single unit? Why would I buy yours? And I'm like, if you can't answer that question for yourself, then there is nothing I'm going to say. I can't talk you into caring about a product that you obviously don't care about. And the number of customers who buy a gun and then buy an absolutely lousy holster from a gun store, and all the staff has on the shelf to offer them is the cheapest, most generic crap that the management could possibly source from a generic national distribution catalog. It's hateful.
Yeah.
And it sets all those people up. It sets those people up for frustration and failure. It sets them up to quit. It sets them up to lose. And I don't want any part of that. If I finding gun stores that have staff that will actually care, that are practitioners themselves, is extremely, extremely rare. Big Tex is a great one. Big Tex is 100%. A shining star in that industry in terms of having staff that trains, having staff that cares, having staff that actually knows and uses all the cool stuff that they sell. But they stand out so much because so much of the rest of the industry is abysmal in that department. Just abysmal.
100%. Yes. So, and they do sell the Enigma, which is one of the only stores I've seen that actually like has the Enigma up on a rack.
Yeah. Filster, Big Tex is one of Filster's main dealers. And that's because they really care about it. They've tried the stuff out. They see how it performs. They understand how it works. They're willing to put the time in to use it and understand it inside and out, and actually be able to provide real help to customers who are getting it and trying it on in the store. Whereas if you just gave somebody an Enigma with no instructions, you are not helping them.
No.
They're going to be worse off for having that than they would be if you just gave them, I'm not going to say a sticky holster, but a generic, decent quality kydex holster with a belt clip.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a real challenge. The customer education part, supporting those customers, helping them grow, making sure that they develop more detail, more nuance in their understanding of the context, of the consequences of carrying well or poorly, of the various trade-offs, because it's all trade-offs all the way down.
Right.
Comfort, all trade-offs. Clothing style, totally trade-offs. How big a gun you carry, how often you carry it, how many spare magazines you carry, if you carry any, what other tools, do you carry medical, do you carry knives, all this stuff. Notice I said knives. Nobody ever carries knife. It's like once you pop the top, you just can't stop. You go from carrying nothing to carrying knives.
Right, plural. I'd love to know your take. I know I don't usually do this. I don't usually bring up like myths that I want to bust or something. Not saying this is necessarily a myth yet, because I want to see what you have to say. But what do you have to say? I should just say this. What do you have to say to the saying you shouldn't have to dress around a gun? Like, you should be able to maintain your carry style. You shouldn't have to compromise.
Do you ever have to change your clothing based on social context?
Absolutely.
Or event?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How's that different?
Yeah.
If you get invited to a black tie dinner and you show up in sweatpants, you get shown the door.
Absolutely.
And everybody understands this. Like, I mean, it's less of a thing now, but everybody used to know what Sunday clothes meant. Put on your Sunday clothes. It's like, okay, well, not your ripped, stained jeans. Right. Nowadays, if you don't wear ripped, stained jeans, probably the pastor will. Who knows? But the idea that there are certain things that are essentially a requirement, or at the very least are appropriate for certain contexts, is uncontroversial. Nobody's upset about that. I mean, even the wearing black to funerals, wearing certain kinds of suits, not wearing white before Labor Day, after Labor Day, I forget what it was, not wearing white to an Italian restaurant. Who knows?
Right.
Whatever
Yes.
the rules are. Some of the rules are practical, some of the rules are cultural, some of the rules are incidental.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
What people mean when they say you shouldn't have to dress around the gun usually doesn't mean you should not ever have to change anything. What they're pushing back on, in my view, is the idea that if you're going to carry a gun, you need to dress like you only shop for clothes at Rural King. You need to look like, as my friend Tam calls it, you need to dress like a murder hobo. You need to wear oversized, baggy, uncomfortable, unflattering workwear. Otherwise, you're not serious about carrying. And you should always be carry the biggest gun you can possibly physically bear to carry. No, absolutely not. That's ridiculous.
Right.
But it used to be, and in some ways it still is, conventional wisdom that if your pants fit snugly with no gun inside the waistband, and then you add a gun inside the waistband, that gun has to fit somewhere. Space requires space. So you cannot realistically expect that one of my friends commented on, we saw a picture of somebody carrying, it wasn't in the context of customer service, it was just somewhere on the internet. And the dude was clearly dressing aspirationally. His shirt size was aspirational. And my friend was like, well, I can read his belt buckle through his shirt. Of course I can see his gun. Like, if you look like you've been shrink wrapped into your clothes, if your clothes fit that snugly that all the contours of your body are visible through the clothing, then you have no available concealment envelope. And if you insist on maintaining that mismatch of clothing size to body type, then carrying a firearm is not going to go well for you. But dressing around the gun doesn't mean you can't wear colors you don't like. It doesn't mean you can't wear fabrics you don't like. It doesn't mean you can't wear jewelry and accessories that you like. You can do all that stuff. You can wear whatever shoes you want, although I like closed-toed shoes that lace tightly so I can run in them. I don't like flip-flops. I mean, everyone understands high heels are a trade-off.
Yes.
There's
100%.
trade-offs all the way down. If by halfway through the event you've got your shoes in your hand and you're walking around barefoot because the high heels, while they look great, are just unbearably uncomfortable, that's the trade-off that you've accepted by wearing them. That's totally fine. It's completely up to you. You can do whatever you want there. That's not a problem. But dressing somewhat around the gun, dressing yourself for success with the gun, is completely normal. It shouldn't be controversial. But trying to tell a person that they have to dress in a certain style in order to be able to conceal is bogus.
Absolutely.
And we joke about the shoot me first vest, the Masada U photographer's vest, the IDPA vest. I don't know, and Masada has pointed this out, I don't know of any cases where a person's been deliberately targeted for violence or for being shot first because they had that vest on. But you better believe anytime I see somebody out in public who's got that kind of vest on, I'm like, I don't do anything about it, but it clearly stands out. It doesn't fit the context.
Right.
And there is, shall we say, a certain type of person who's likely to be the kind wearing that kind of vest out and about in public. It's not soccer moms.
Right.
And so the congruence of certain age, sex, overall appearance, like that person looks like a very, very well-dressed, well-put-together, clean-cut, 65-year-old military veteran. That's a vibe. You can pick it up. If that person has a certain kind of haircut, you can go, yep, that person's a state trooper. They would definitely give you a ticket. It's immediately apparent.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I walked up on a state trooper. And it was this was dumb. I should not have done this. And this funny story that we should end here because I have to run.
Sure.
I was in a parking lot of a hardware store, and an off-duty state trooper got out of a marked car near the back of the parking lot. He didn't see me. I don't think he'd seen that I saw him get out of his car. He's in civilian clothes. He's wearing an outside the waistband, poorly concealed paddle holster. And I know what specific gun the Indiana State Police issue because I've made holsters for it. And we sort of were converging together toward the front of the store. And I can see from his haircut, and I saw the car he got out of, and I know what gun he's carrying. And I said, so are you, I didn't like walk up behind him and start talking to him. I'm in his peripheral. I'm like, hey, so are you carrying the so-and-so and so-and-so or the compact version? And he just turned and looked at me with this look like, am I going to have to shoot you now? Like, what are you talking about? And I immediately thought, I should have kept my mouth shut. I should not have said that. And
that's really funny.
And it was me being a smart ass.
Right.
It was absolutely what it was.
Right.
But it could have been the start of a really negative interaction.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know what kind of day that guy's had. I don't know what kind of case he's just been working on. I don't have any idea what's going on in his headspace. And the fact that I might be the thing that just was the last straw for him that day, I have no control over that. I have total control over whether my big mouth inserted itself into that situation. I have no control over his reaction to it.
Absolutely.
And so for me, generally, I have a policy of when I see guns in public, and I see guns in public a lot, I don't say a thing about it to anybody. But that doesn't mean I don't take pictures. Every once in a while, every once in a while, like, I saw a guy with a full-size gun tucked into his waistband, small at back, no holster of any kind, just tucked into his waistband. Not concealed, no cover garment, just open carrying a tucked-in gun. And I'm like, we're at the self-checkout. He's on the other side of the self-checkout facing away from me. And I can just see this gun. And I'm like checking out my stuff. I'm scanning my Triscuits. And I got my phone out, got my camera out. And just for a second, turned, click, took a picture, sent it to John. I'm like, hey, look, check out the loot drop. Like, this is a guy who's walking around with, he's a free gun. Yeah. He doesn't know it. But he was so preoccupied. Anybody who wanted to could have walked up to him and put their hand on his gun before he knew they were there.
Yeah.
Is it his constitutional right to be an idiot in public? Absolutely. Does it potentially endanger me and my family? Yes, it does. Do I take it seriously? Absolutely. If it were, if it were my druthers, would there be social shame and aspersions cast on a person for being that lazy? Yeah, I mean, yes, but I don't want to have China-style social credit scores. I don't want people getting dinged, but I did run into one of my customers one time in a store. I'm like, hey, so-and-so, I remembered his name. I'm like, how's that holster working out? And he's like, I'm not carrying it. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't mean to embarrass you. It's got to be embarrassing to run into the person who made something for you, and then they ask you how it's going, and you're like, yeah, I don't have it on me. I don't carry that often.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But he could totally have carried pepper spray. Should have been carrying pepper spray.
Yeah.
And that is cheap enough that, like, the financial burden of getting into carrying a firearm is substantial. A good holster system, training classes, ammunition, and a good quality firearm is not an insignificant amount of money. It is a real investment. And if someone's finances can't support that, like, would I tell you, you should max out your credit card to get a gun in a holster right now? If you don't have one, I would actually say, try to find a friend who's got a couple and see if you can borrow one for a little while and just start to work out how you're going to do that all.
Yes.
Don't put the cart before the horse.
Right. Yes. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't talk to state troopers who are poorly concealing in public. They do not have a sense of humor about it.
Absolutely. By the way, the situation you mentioned earlier about a friend who had a student who was in a bad situation, I actually ran into someone who follows me on social at a Whole Foods, and she recognized me, and it's always mixed because when I see people in public that know me from my page, they know I have a gun on me, so that's not always something I like love.
They suspect you,
but they suspect. But she told me she was in a little bit of a domestic violence situation. She told me about her situation at the front of the store, and it was one of those nights I was desperately trying to just go get a few salmon fillets to surprise my husband for his favorite meal before he got home. And I was there talking for an hour with this stranger, and that's fine. The store closed. They put the salmon away. I nearly cried. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
You're
Anyway,
clearly carrying that. That's a core memory.
100%. So I'm not mad at all. I'm joking. So she tells me her story, and it was one of those moments where I truly felt like I was supposed to run into her and give her some advice. And I basically just pointed her to my page and like a few things she could start with. She ended up calling me 16 times the next day, and like on Instagram. And I didn't even see it because I don't check my DMs that well. I have an assistant for that, and we're both behind. And a couple days later, I saw the message and I listened to like the voice messages. And she explained to me that she made a fake phone number somehow, I think Google number or whatever. She texted her ex-husband, who she was in this domestic situation with, and said, don't F around with so-and-so, her name, because she's got a gun. And did that to scare him and like messed with him on a few accounts through this number, knowing that he was a violent person, knowing like he knew where she lived and all this stuff. And she called me like 16 times, like wanted me to, she wrote me a DM. She was like, I need you to meet up with me right now. I need a private lesson right now. And she mentioned also when we were at Whole Foods that she wasn't in like a super great financial place. So all these things, and my gut was just telling me not to get involved. Like it was a bad situation. And I guess I want to say that for anyone going through something like that, I felt very obligated because she felt like she could trust me. But I finally wrote her back and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm not law enforcement. You need to go reach out to law enforcement, because this man broke into her house, stole the gun. So she was like, I need you to meet me right now. I need you to help me pick out a gun. I need you to teach me a class. And I was like, dude, I'm in the middle of my work day. Like, I can't just like, I don't even know you.
I left my cape at home. I'm sorry.
Exactly. I think I wrote her back and I was like, I feel like maybe I've given you the wrong impression. I'm not a vigilante. I'm not a law enforcement officer. I've never even been one. So I would really advise that you go and find help there. And if you want to take a class, here's my link to sign up for a class. But I don't do last minute private lessons. And the fact that she called her, like basically taunted him, it was a very interesting situation.
You will never get away from people making situations worse.
Yeah.
A lot of people make a lot of situations worse. Yeah. It isn't our job to fix everyone's situation. The gear that I make doesn't fix anybody's relationships. It doesn't fix their relationships in their family. It doesn't fix their relationships with their coworkers. Mm-hmm. The gear that I make doesn't fix anybody's substance abuse issues. Mm-hmm. It doesn't fix any of their financial difficulties, and in fact, it can worsen them. And I have to encourage people not to spend what they don't have. We have to be very realistic about what the actual scope of our work can be, because I'm not a savior. I'm not here to save people. Mm-hmm. I'm here to help people who are willing and able and capable of putting in some amount of work to grow and help themselves. And absent that, nothing that I do will be effectual.
Right.
I can't give them educational resources that will solve their problem. I can't pay for them to go to a class that will fix everything. Craig can't solve their problem. None of these things, they're all tools. None of them are guaranteed solutions to anything.
Yeah.
Not to anything. I can't deal with a person's, nothing I make addresses their medical issues. Right. If they have medical problems, I make holsters.
Right.
And all those various factors all combine to give them the life and the situation that they're currently in. And that doesn't mean that I can't be sympathetic toward them, that I can't give them what I would want to be the most helpful advice that I can give them.
Right.
But I can't fix it for them, and I don't feel a responsibility to. It's not a failure on my part that the tools that I make that do not address the problem they have don't address the problem they have.
Right.
That's not it. And
that's a good point.
It is really easy to want to try to help everyone, to want to fix people. And it's infuriating how much stuff in the self-defense space is so poorly thought out and so inadvisable that if you actually do it or use it, like those little contact stun guns that you talked about with Chuck, like, hey, you know what it'll do? Make anyone you touch with it really angry and give them a massive adrenaline surge. You're basically giving them a let's stay and fight some more shot in the arm. Why would you do that?
A level up. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, you just gave this person the little Mario star.
Exactly. That's exactly.
And they're going to be
thinking
unstoppable. And then you are just going to get run over.
Exactly.
The number of things like that, they're all over the place. I can't make a product that does what those wish they could do. That product doesn't exist.
Right.
It just doesn't exist. It can't exist. That's not what products do.
Right.
But in the meantime, I can keep being a practitioner. I can keep getting on the mats. I can keep going to classes. I can keep testing the gear that I make. I can keep listening to customers who are testing it for their feedback to improve it. And then, to the best of my ability, providing the educational resources, the customer support that allows the people who use the stuff we make to succeed to the best of their ability across the whole range of circumstances that they live and work and travel and recreate in. And if I do that, I have a clean conscience. I've not been negligent. I've done my job. I've delivered the value that I promised for the money that I received. And I've made certain people's lives easier and in some ways safer. Absolutely. That is a valuable thing. I find that interesting and challenging and motivating enough to keep me going. I don't want to make baubles and knickknacks and tchotchke junk.
Yeah.
I want to make things that really make an impact on people's lives. If they have the worst day of their life and they need that firearm in extremis, I want to be in the background where our gear worked so smoothly and so seamlessly and was so reliable that they don't even think about it on that day.
Right.
I want it to just work and be an afterthought. Days later, when they're thinking it through and when all the adrenaline has died down, and they go, wow, that holster didn't move at all. My gun stayed with me when I got knocked down, and when I got back up and it was time to get it out, it was right where it was supposed to be. The gun came out completely clean and fast, and I was able to use it and keep myself safer, protect my kids, protect whoever else I was trying to protect, and it worked. It did its job. Like, the highest praise for the things that we make is they delivered, they did their job when the time came.
Absolutely.
Not they made me happy, not they improved my social life. Like, there's all these things that we're just not trying to do. And most of our customers never, ever use anything we make to the degree where its final purpose gets tested. And that's by design. That's good. We don't want to hear from every customer who has a holster that it worked well for them in a real gunfight. If we got more,
of course,
if we started getting multiple emails about that every week, something completely different would be going on. Like, why are we getting all these customer testimonials about gunfights? Like, that shouldn't be happening.
Right.
Even if all the news is good, there shouldn't be that much news.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
That's where I'm for tonight. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you for being on. I appreciate everything you shared today. So many incredible perspectives. If you're listening and you want exclusive content, we have a Patreon. We have social for highlights at She Shield Pod. All the resources mentioned on Andrew's behalf and his socials, everything will be linked in the show notes, along with the books he mentioned, the training, Annette Evans, all that stuff will be linked in the show notes. If you or anyone is a firearms owner experiencing a crisis, looking to Hold My Guns. They're an organization that will connect you with an FFL or gun shop to store your firearm for you until you're ready to get it back. The link to access their website is in the show notes. Thank you for listening. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant.